So that's how you can search for projects in here. From this screen, you can do a couple more things with your projects. If you do have a project that has absolutely no data, you probably want to look at that, make sure that you want to bring it in, perhaps fix the source data where it's coming from, confirm that your mile markers are correct. A lot of times it's based on mile markers, those being incorrect, that it won't be pulling any relevant data for crash and bridge and pavement. You can, oh, I'm sorry.
I have a question about funding. Like in the Houston region, say a project is awarded funding by the MPO at 80/20. Sometimes if the local government goes back and asks for more funding, they're awarded the next funding at 50/50, but it's the same category. So when y'all are rolling all of that together, we're getting a...
In decision lens, we do not make a distinction between federal, state, and local source funding.
Okay, but there's a percent.
Right. This is not decision lens, it's TMDIS.
Okay.
It's made to more closely reflect the source data than decision lens does.
Okay.
But once we actually send that funding to decision lens, we don't separate federal category $1 from state category $1.
I will say, though, that once in Decision Lens, if you had a situation where you needed to make a distinction of the funding type, like that one, for instance, you can make that change on how the scenario is built, if you needed to. If it was really important for you to say Category 1 state versus Category 1 federal, you could add an additional funding category. You would just have to then make sure that the projects that are affected by that are requesting money from the correct location.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. Good questions. From this screen, you can add more projects. So you can search for more projects to add. You can delete projects. So if you click on a specific project or multiple projects, you can remove that project from your portfolio. For instance, if it had no source data and you didn't want to bring it in, you can go ahead and remove it. It's all local to PMDIS and your portfolio, so nothing is affected outside of this screen. That's basically the ways that you could find DCIS projects and bring them into this portfolio, analyze those projects and make sure that you have the correct ones. I'm also going to show you the import. But before I do that, I just want to see if there's any other questions about searching for projects. Can't remember if any of the questions that came up in the last class about searching, but
Question. Is the search limited by district? So let's say you wanted to do 5 districts at a time. Can you do that?
I think it's what you have access to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're a division house, then you're going to have capabilities of pulling whatever data you're needing, right? Because you're working in a broader umbrella. The districts are unfortunately going to be restricted to their districts, and then whatever MPOs are within their district. And MPOs are generally going to be restricted to their MPO area. So that's just how we're setting the permissions up. We can fluctuate that if need be. If there's a reason for it, we can. You just have to let us know.
Okay, so if you wanted to add projects by district, you just need to go one district at a time and build in that portfolio?
Actually, an easier approach would be if you have the CSJ list already.
Okay.
Copy that out of Excel and paste it into the CSJ list box in the search page.
There's various different ways of doing searches.
Right.
I mean, not enforcing. It's a good thing, right? It's real flexible, you know. So you know,
You
sky's
can
the limit when it comes to that.
you can leave the district blank, but I would just put in a lot of other search parameters. Be a lot of pages to prune.
Actually, I want to address that too. We actually put a limit on the total number of projects you can get in a search. It's only 5,000 right now. So if you have more than 5,000 projects to add to a portfolio, you'll have to do them separately. But that's to keep you from shutting everyone else down who's trying to use it at the same time.
Yeah, so in this training environment, we're doing things all at the same time. You all created a portfolio, you all added projects. Did anyone see that you were in a queue to do that work? Okay. So as you go through some of these processes today, you might see that you are in a queue of people because it's doing those one at a time. So if there is a backup of people, it will cue you in that work. That way it doesn't just shut you out. But outside of a training situation, it's highly unlikely that you're going to all be accessing it at the same time. But if you are, that's what that means. A question came up in a previous training about the changes that you make to a project in here. And I want to bring that up because it was a very relevant one that I remembered. If you are in here and you see a change that needs to be made, and you make a specific change, and you save it, it's saved. Well, that did not save. Okay, I probably chose a field that I can't change. But if you do make a change, and you save it, we're going to go theoretical here. If you have a project that you do change information on, and you're changing it for real reasons that will work, and you want to use that in another portfolio that you're creating, instead of making those changes again after you bring the project in, you can actually send your projects with their changes to another portfolio. And we did this in a previous training where we made a change, we selected that project, so I'm going to select a project here. If I made changes to this project and I wanted to send it to someone else's portfolio because you're also working on similar projects and I caught the change, I can select the project, I can go down to the bottom, I can copy the project to another portfolio by selecting it from this list, and I can say copy. And as long as I can see it in this list, because it's in the same district or MPO that I have access to, I can send it to that portfolio. So if you are working with other people and you do find a change and you want to make sure that everyone has that change or that other person, you could do that action as well.
So if somebody goes and they try to pull that CSJ in their portfolio, they're going to get the original one?
Correct. That's why I was originally saying, if you do make a change, also request that that change is made in DCIS or wherever, because if you do a search for that project again, you want to make sure that it has that change. Because if you don't, if you're just making the changes locally and you do a search for that project again, it's going to have the original data.
Once you make the changes, it stays in your portfolio, not in the core data.
Yes.
So instead of changing the project to a different portfolio and the portfolio already had that initial project in it, what do they see? Do they have to accept the change, or does it
It's already, I think it just duplicates it, is that right? When there's already a date, that project's already in a portfolio, and then you get a portfolio that's got the same project in it.
And you send.
It'll be a duplicate.
And that's because we need to support multiple scenarios for the same project. Different options, different descriptions,
Alternatives.
funding,
Yeah.
you know.
You had an-
So is there a way to flag or to say, this is the change I made in this duplicate, to like let the other person know, or to make a note in that portfolio, like why there's a duplicate and what changed that duplicate?
Maybe the most visible way to do that would be project ID in PMDIS. If you click through into a project, that is a field next to the CSJ, and that's actually an alternative name for the project. We actually import the MPO ID into that by default, but you could append something on there that gives it another name to notify.
Let's say two persons are working on two similar, you caught something, the other person caught something else, and then you say, oh, well, I'm going to share this with my coworker. And you have two almost, how to merge it? How does that happen? Does someone have to?
In that scenario, you would probably be working off the exact same project in the same portfolio. Right?
Okay, right.
So both of the changes would be going onto the same project. You would both be saving over the same data.
I think at this point you'd have to just coordinate. You know, if you two are working together and you found a change and you talk about it that your change is correct, you can delete it and send it. I mean, I think it's a little bit manual at this point, but yeah.
Yeah, because you have to keep track of the version, the version control that you have. Let's say she's in Austin, I'm in Houston, we're working on similar things, and you don't have that time, and then just the version control.
But we can work in the same portfolio.
Yes, you can share your portfolio with someone else, so this way they can then take it and work on it as well, so. And then just to kind of go off of that, we actually, one of the persons that attended our last training actually notified us, what she did is she used, CMDIS and was able to pull data for some of their designers, like crash data or something that they were needing, instead of going through the normal means of doing it. She goes, it's so much easier doing it this way, and so she's already found different, applications of using it in-house, so that's exactly what we're talking about, sky's the limit when it comes to this stuff. But, and what she did, she just pulled the data that she was looking for, and then she shared it with their designers, so this way they could have it. So, so anyway, that's just a...
That's also only gonna become a problem if both of you open it at the same time and leave it open for long enough for the other one to change something, and then you change it.
And you're overriding maybe
Right.
her results or her edits, and that could happen. I mean, it's a possibility.
And, we do have a full audit log of every change that's ever been made. That's not usable yet to roll back the version of the project, but that is on our roadmap to make previous versions visible.
Jeff has a
Could you
question.
speak about, the ancestor CSJs, or linked CSJs, and what we're going to be seeing?
We are not using Ancestor CSJs right now. We are planning to actually add Ancestor CSJs to the project search. So if you know the 900 number, the original 900 number of the CSJ before it rolled over, then you'd be able to search for it that way. We're not actually using it for any dependencies.
How about the linkage that we have, with right-of-way CSJs, which are separate projects than construction CSJs?
We are not automatically linking those.
So when I'm looking for a right-of-way project, right now, we also have pulled up several projects that reference right-of-way. I can't really tell without knowing if that's the right-of-way CSJ I'm looking at or a construction CSJ, which means I can't tell if the funding is right-of-way funding or the construction funding.
So the project classification should say right-of-way, shouldn't it, if it's the right-of-way CSJ?
The project classification, there's lots of terms that are used in there, and right-of-way is one of them, but a project does not require to say right-of-way for a right-of-way project. So there's other terms in there, like multiple terms that are used to represent a project. Right-of-way is one of those, but a right-of-way project can be identified with something other than ROW on that project classification field.
Again, this goes back to what we talked about earlier, consistency, and that's just, one of those things that, as we move forward, Jeff, and whatever system we end up in, whether it's an extension of decision lens, or, what we're looking at here, or something else in PM, that has to come from education to everyone that's setting up projects in the ECIS, because there has to be consistency. You can't, it's hard otherwise to be able to manage that, that expectation when there's variables of what something means. I mean, and unfortunately, we can only do with what we have to work with, unfortunately. But I understand your question, and you're right, I've seen that too, Jeff. I think how we manage that, we're going to have to talk about that, because that is important. But again, it has to start with consistency of the projects in the system, system records that we're working on, unfortunately. So.
And like Robert said, we can talk about adding right-of-way CSJ, adding support to let you link to those projects from the project here, so that we would get that number in there in the project screen for you, so that you would see this is supposed to be the right-of-way CSJ. Go and look at the contents of that one.
That's what I would like to be able to see, that because the budgets are different, even letting dates are different between the two screens. That's a problem that right-of-way division has as far as populating letting dates on the P2 screen of the right-of-way CSJ.
Yeah.
So we can add right-of-way CSJ. We can add the link functionality for contract CSJ as well, and ancestors and descendants from DCIS. We can add all of those and make them all work sort of the same way.
And then moving forward, using the time, that we talked talked about earlier, dependencies, we can actually make that meaningful, right? I mean, because right now, as you said, right-of-way should be purchased prior to any construction, any letting even for construction. Right now, it's all over the place, and we understand that. We're trying to improve that, so it's just something that we have to work to improve, really. But I think the timing, the dependencies and the timeframes, I think, are really going to help that particular aspect of it.
Thank you.
All right, great. Okay, let's see. Importing. So for projects that are off-network, you can import those in, ones that you can't find in DCIS. And I'm going to show you the resources on how to do that, and then I'll show you an example of how you would accomplish it. So from your screens, if you're still in the Edit Portfolio and you want to follow along, if you click on the Import Projects link, that'll take you into the import screen. Here is where you would be importing project data into. But for the sake of today, if you think that you would be importing projects, go ahead and click on this Download an Empty Template. If you're not going to be importing projects, you could just watch. But for those of you that might be doing this in the future, go ahead and click on Download an Empty Template. And what this is going to do is it's going to download an Excel file, which I'm opening right now. And I'm pretty sure I'm sharing Excel. Yep, okay. So what I have here, let's see if we can make it a little bit bigger. Okay. This is the ability to import project data from a spreadsheet. Now there's two tabs at the bottom, for those of you that can see. One says On System and one says Off System. For On System projects, you would be identifying similar pieces of information, CSJ, project identifier, contract CSJ, district, county MPO. I believe it's only the first two fields that are required, and the rest of it is just additional information. And you can hover over each individual field and we'll give you information on what that field is or how it should be formatted for the import. This one, for On System, doesn't have, it has a lot of fields, but not nearly as many as Off System. And the reason being is that the idea here is that you would be able to identify the mile markers for an on-system project, and then that can be referenced in all of the source systems to pull back crash data and congestion data and other things like that. The Off System is where things start to get a little interesting. Off System, let me zoom in a little bit, and as it says at the top, this is intended for projects that don't have a corresponding data in subsystems. So this is the ability for you to import projects that can't be looked up or referenced in all of these source systems, where you have the option of putting in that data that can be used in place of the source system data, crash data, bridge data, congestion data, network data, etc. In this instance, there are considerably more fields because of that need to provide that information that can't be referenced. For instance, I'm just going to pick on one here for bridge, for pavement. So I'm in the section called pavement. You have ride scores, distress scores, basically any and every field that can be used to calculate these values in decision lens for scoring are available for you to manually input. This is basically in place of having data on network data, on system data in the source systems. I don't know exactly which are required fields or not. I would think it's mainly the beginning fields, having a project identifier in a district. But again, if you enter in a very slimmed down version of an off-system project, it won't be able to score. It'll be as if it had reds across the board, and that's what it would probably show when you actually enter this in. I have prepared a file to import to show you what that looks like. It is an on-system, but before I go there, I just want to pause for a minute and ask if there's any specific questions about importing off-system projects, because that did come up earlier today, and it has come up in the past, and we wanted to just show that there is a way to do it. It is very manual because it is off-system, and we're trying to gather as much data as we can about it so that you are given the benefit of the doubt for getting that project into Decision Lens, getting it scored against on-system projects accurately.
And this goes back to my opening remarks about giving the MPOs an opportunity to enter projects that are local priorities that would not be in our source system. You know, this is how you would do it, and then Michelle made a comment about how if it is in our source systems, if you see that some of the data elements may be out of date or need to be updated, then this is one way of introducing that updated information into at least the proposal to get, you know, more accurate or better results as you would expect from updated data.
Okay. All right, so with that, I am going to close this one, and I am going to open up this file. Okay. So here I have an import file, and this import file has CSJs. It also has contract CSJs. I am going to, Ben, can you remind me, for the CSJ of an import, I can make that anything I want, right?
You can make it as few as 6 digits.
6 digits, okay. So for this one, okay, perfect. So here I have an example import file. I created my own CSJ, 123, and this has a lot of information about my projects. It has my limits, it has my description, project class, things like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to import this in. I'm going to pretend that I just entered this, and I'm going to import this into my portfolio.